No, that's wrong. This is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And we've got a good show for you. It is, guess what? It is, goodness, it's holiday season. We're in full swing holiday season. And we thought that it would be a good idea to talk to you a little bit about being productive, though we're in the midst of a holiday season. Though we're in the midst of a holiday season. So, Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. It's a productivity show where we're talking about leveling up. We'll talk about money some, and we'll talk about relationships some, and we'll talk about all things that interface with productivity. We'll talk about politics on your job, and we talk about all kinds of things like that. And certainly, we talk about being productive even during the holiday season. So, that and more on Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder today. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening, man?
What is up? How are you doing? I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing all right too. Just looking forward to getting some ish done. Getting some ish done. you have any initial thoughts about remaining productive during holidays? And really, holidays is that's sort of proxy for any period of time where you have a lot of family around, or you have a lot of maybe less structured time. Perhaps spring break could be, another something that would be analogous, or maybe, I don't know, summer, or at least
Rosh
aspects
Hashanah,
of summer, not the whole summer, but aspects of summer. So I don't know.
Kwanzaa. Anyways, when it comes
Right.
to one thing I noticed actually is that people actually end up being busier, right? And one of the reasons why this will happen, let's say, you're talking about typically productive people in a typically productive either work environment or industry or something like that. Towards the end of the year, let's say you're in sales, people are trying to close their deals so that they make their sales numbers and get their bonus. Okay. If you're same thing with like traders, by traders I mean people who are trading either currency or stocks or whatever, they're also working on that P&L, profit loss, for the end of the year. A lot of things, especially when it comes to finance and sales, in any organization I'm talking about right now, any organization has the sales and target and stuff like that. A lot of that kind of stuff gets structured within the cadence of a fiscal year, right? Which for most people ends December 31st. So there's a lot of activity that actually happens, right? And also, people are trying to preempt or anticipate the people going and taking vacation, right? So they're like, I'm going to front load you with all these requests, or I'm going to try to get you to do all these things, or try to get the answers to all those things, tie things up, if you will, because people are going on holiday, right? And in a season like this, where it's like majority of the world, this is the holiday season for majority of the world. I noticed that a lot of people do get busy in that regard. So that's one end of things. And then on the other end of things, there's the people over obligating themselves on the family front, where you want to invite everybody over, and you want to have the fancy whatever, maybe not fancy, but the elaborate and thoughtful event and blah blah blah, and it ends up frustrating the heck out of you. And there's a certain type of person that that gets into this particular deal all the time. They're typically like maybe a good host and whatnot, but they end up overextending themselves, over obligating themselves. They want to make everybody happy, and then they burn out, right? So on both ends, whether it's over obligating and extending yourself because you want everybody to feel happy, or you're trying to chase down the last dollars, close the last deal, or preempt people going on holiday, so you try to tie things up. There's a lot of chaos that happens in this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me pull up the clip and let's start talking. Let's see here. Yeah, and this is who is this? Adam Ivy. Adam Ivy. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about being productive during holidays. So, see what he has to say.
No, 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 no.
That's not exactly what he has to say, but let's go ahead.
Okay.
We are in the holiday season, in between Halloween and then Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's, everything in between. And that's one reason that you guys probably won't get anything accomplished Q4 of this year into next year, which then inevitably turns into February and March. I'm not trying to be negative. I'm here to try to keep you on track. The overwhelm that you might feel, that I might feel right now, is real. Didn't try to rhyme that. But if we look at what goes on at the end of the year, money problems, girlfriend problems, family get-togethers, scheduling problems, these things add up to being incredibly overwhelming, which takes us out of the game. And then next year is going to take you so much longer to get back into it And it's a perpetual cycle that I think you guys need to avoid. So wanted to throw together a quick YouTube video and tell you how I stay on track and how I've been able to get through the overwhelm, the pressure that you put on yourself, along with all the other external stresses that happen at the end of every year. Now, where you have to start is
Okay, so do you think he added? Do you think that he included enough of the stuff, like the distracting stuff? Can you think of any other stuff that maybe he missed?
Yeah, he was kind of co-signing, as they say, some of the things that I mentioned, right, with regards to the external
Right.
pressures in this time of year. Now, if I were to try to anticipate and where he may be going, or what would one do as a result, and then maybe I can then find these other stressors out there as I feel my way through here. But one thing to know is that a lot of this stuff, a lot of the stress, a lot of the distraction is self-imposed, right? It shouldn't necessarily. I'm not. It doesn't mean that the things are not going on out there. It doesn't mean that there are not ads out there telling you to buy Christmas presents. It doesn't mean that there's not all this stuff there in the workplace and the office place about people telling you either to relax or trying to invite you to Christmas potlucks, one of which I was invited to tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to make it. And and things of that nature. I honestly do want to go, Dr. Thunder, but it's not going to. I don't think it's gonna happen, but
You don't want to go. You
oh
don't
wow!
wanna go.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one there, because okay, I don't. Let me not. That's a rabbit hole. That's a rabbit hole in and of itself. That's a rabbit hole in and of itself. But the fact that a lot of these things are self-imposed, okay. And then there is when you mentioned the financial problems, right? People spend a lot during this time of year, okay? And also, a lot of people find that, January, February, March is like recovery time, trying to recover, trying to wait for the tax returns to hit so that they can, pay for, the extra hotel or whatever crazy thing that they did and the extra gifts and all these other kinds of things. Prices of things do go up. Well, the kinds of things that people buy this time of year is heavily inflated, right? There's a lot of jewelry being purchased and things of that nature. And the outside influence. So if you understand that basically we copy each other and advertising is telling you to copy this person or this lifestyle or whatever it may be seen in this magazine or this billboard or this video, it's amplified in the holiday season. And I don't just mean the advertising. I mean, everybody now is telling you, okay, because it's an echo chamber, right? Everybody is telling you to spend. You might not even notice that that's why you may be shelling out the extra dollars, right? But it's in the air. It's the holiday season. It's the most wonderful time, right? All that stuff is going on. And we're constantly infecting each other with that. So if I were to add something, it would be this kind of mimetic copying of indulgence that goes on, right? And I don't think that maybe there's something about the cold too that gets people into that comfort food zone. And the comfort food zone is it's not just food that you're going to indulge in. People just want to indulge in that.
Mhm.
So there's the cold season, and then there's everybody else. Everybody else becomes a billboard now of, well, what are you buying now? What are you buying? And what are you doing? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going here.
is with the schedule. It's going to sound like common sense, but why aren't you doing it? You got to know what you're doing day to day. Got to know what you're doing week to week. If you can get scheduled down to hour, for the most part, I'm not saying that you have to get down to 15-minute chunks, but if you are the type to get down to 15-minute chunks and you stick to that, then you know what you're going into. Spontaneity or spontaneity is okay. It's great. It's the spice of life. But when it comes to your business, when it comes to building your brand, when it comes to you taking your creativity and getting it out to the world, there's a lot of stuff that we have to do. And during the holiday season, that's when the obligations start piling on. If you're working retail, that's when you're working more. The people in your life, family, friends, the significant other, you're going to have to do things. Make sure that as much as you can, schedule those things so you know what to look forward tomorrow. Now, the second thing that I would highlight.
Seems pretty rudimental, but you want to add anything?
The family obligations. So because I talked about self-imposed things, and then to the degree to which one has to prioritize all these self-imposed kind of obligations, and family will be at the top of that priority. There's something coming from the externally, other people, and their claims on your time. Well, family would have to be number one, right? Well, I mean, outside of your productivity, right? Or outside of all that stuff that you're doing, then when it's now external, then it's family is number one. And with that kind of with family, since you're with them for the most part, and by family I mean your close, your actual, your nuclear family, as they say, right? You're with them the whole year round, so you should be able to, or they should have some insight into your schedule, your cadence, your rhythm, and you guys should be able to like plan ahead and say, okay, yes, I will be working kind of crazy all through maybe the 24th or whatever it might be, and we are going to take this little trip XYZ. These are the things that I need to in a particular case. Let's say maybe if you we're talking about a spouse, you may even let them into the maybe some of the deadlines that you have, so that you can actually refer to something. Because if it's a vague notion of I'm just busy, I find that perhaps most human beings are less willing to empathize with that. But if you've told them like, hey, for months coming now, or right since maybe October, it's been like, oh, I have this thing and this other two things to do, right? And then when the time starts approaching, be like, oh yeah, I actually haven't finished this thing. Because what people are looking for is involvement, right? In this case, right? They want to be involved. They want to be part of your life, all that kind of stuff, right? Quality time. So part of the quality time, or part of the quality in there, is that they know what you're doing. That, oh, I didn't get the green bottle stuff done. And like, oh wow, that's crazy. And you did promise the guy that da da da. Yeah, but you remember then I had to do the calculator stuff. That's why. Oh, okay, cool. So I guess whatever. Just go ahead, do an all-nighter. I'll put on a pot of coffee for you. Blah 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 blah. Those kinds of things. So these are the ways in which you can, for the family, close family side, preempt, plan, bring them in. They can empathize and all those kinds of things. When it comes to the extended family stuff, now I tend to have more just of a everything just drops off for me at that point. It's like, okay, immediate nuclear family, extended family, then they don't have much claims on my time. And I would advise that should be the case. If you want to be a very productive person, okay, leave and cleave. Right? This notion that, but Uncle Ben and Aunt Viv and this, that, and the other, and we're then gonna get a boat and we're all going to Maine, and no. Now, people might, anyone who is familiar with me would be like, well, how convenient, Ike. Like, we know you don't you don't want to go to the Christmas party anyways. Okay, so very convenient for you to say, hey, look, man, leave and cleave, do all these type of things. I'm living my own life now. I have my own responsibility. I have my own legacy here. The ball has been passed to me, using a soccer analogy. And you guys passed the ball too in American football, I believe. The ball has been passed to me. Now it's my time to do this stuff, and I can't be looking back, at you guys. So two things I mainly said when it comes to the external obligations and managing it. Okay. And I want to know your thoughts about this, kind of like the whole scheduling thing. Because it's like, well, why is that special for this? Anyways, but when it comes to the external pressures for the family one, which is the top of the priority in terms of people who have claims to your time, you should bring them in a little bit to what you're doing and you will find that they will actually empathize, and you're killing two birds with one stone in the sense that you're actually giving them that kind of quality interaction because they feel like more part of your stuff, right? And then for the extended stuff, you got to learn to cut off, and maybe we can talk about how actually one does effectively cut people off. Not because this is a big challenge for most people, right? Like
Yeah.
the idea is, you're rude, you're bad, you're evil. Because as I always say, a lot of what people's notion of morality has to do with that social cohesion. And if you're breaking what is in their view social cohesion, you're evil somehow, right?
Right.
And that bothers people because people typically don't want to be evil. So then they get into being obligated. So we can talk a little bit more about how one does that. But what are your thoughts about his scheduling thing? Because if you're scheduling the whole year, and then, well, why would you stop now? Or is this what are your thoughts about the scheduling thing you mentioned?
Yeah. I'm a scheduler. If it's not on my calendar, then it probably won't happen. Now, I do have like some blocks of time that are not necessarily specifically stipulated. They'll just be blocks of time, and I can use those for whatever I need to use those for. But especially during the school year, during the semester, like I'm in finals week right now. Um, so my schedule is very much more open, and I have a couple projects in particular that I'm working on. One of which is basically done. I wrote, let's see here, I wrote 4-string quartets for church services that will be, on Christmas Eve. So I had to get that finished. And that's the kind of project where I can,
Did
if
you
I have
find the violinists that you were looking for?
right. So um, I'm almost there. Most everybody has already been booked. It's just the last few people that I need. I think I'm down to just needing one person. But I actually hired someone to hire the string players, and they did
Gotcha.
most of that. But then they were like, okay, we're having some trouble because this is it's a busy day for string players. Christmas Eve, a lot of churches do Christmas Eve services, and so, but you know, but having like some large blocks of time where one day I basically almost the whole day I just worked on it, and I knocked out like 3 charts, 3 quartets, and then the next day so once I get started I can go fast. Good. Once I get the ball rolling, then it just goes. Sometimes the challenge is carving the time out to have it. But I always kind of knew, I didn't always kind of know, I always knew that there was this block of time that I was going to be able to get that project done. So now I'm on another project, which is a lot of editing. I'm editing a lot of music, recreating some music, and I have a particular deadline for the end of this week. I have 3 songs that have to be either edited or created. One of them is done. I've got 2 more to go, right? So stuff like that. And now I don't have a church gig right now. I stepped away from a church gig that I had. And so that's actually positive because depending on the church and the size of the church, you may have a whole lot of extra rehearsals and a lot of extra stuff to do. And then, of course, they're going to have their services, and this particular church was going to do service on Christmas Day, on New Year's Day, and a watch night service on New Year's Eve late. Mm-hmm. So that actually cleared out a bunch of time. So that's good. But as far as scheduling, I think, why stop scheduling? Why stop scheduling just because it's the holiday season? You still need to be efficient. You still have to get stuff done. And I like what you said about, immediate family, they get the priority. If you have time to hang, it's going to be with the immediate family. It's, as far as like spreading that out to everybody else, leave and cleave indeed.
And speaking of cadences and stuff like that, I mentioned end of year, people kind of trying to squeeze a lot in now in the business world.
Yeah.
One thing that one thing I noticed is that it's actually January that is slow. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you know that, and if you plan correctly, okay, you can kind of like lighten that calendar load a little bit in order to have time, let's say, with the immediate nuclear family, if you will, because that the first week of January, when it's technically not the holiday season anymore, it's New Year's done. People are barely around. Things are barely starting. There's all kinds of things going on. There's too much snow in Michigan. Who knows what it is? But typically speaking, there's a lot of you're going to have a lot of time to catch up. So you can kind of plan in that way. Now, this is something that you'll have to have at least had 2 years to kind of see the flow and the pattern and such, right? But hopefully the people whom are listening are over 2 years old, or at least being productive for more than 2 years, and so they kind of will know the cadence of those kinds of things. But I wanted to add something also with regards to cadence, and this is maybe a niche thing, but it has to do with businesses. I guess it's not niche, but it's just people whom either are operating businesses, own businesses, or that operations manager kind of level of business. So that's why it's niche, because they're the ones who concern themselves with those kinds of things. But as you know, things that apply in one area typically apply in multiple areas. And this is the sense that you need to perhaps change the cadence rather than end your fiscal year on this, December, where you tell your salespeople, for example, right, that this is the end of the year and then you're getting bonus. Then it's like, why not end it on February 15th? There's no law, by the way, that says there's no law that says, okay, the calendar itself is kind of arbitrary too, in a certain sense, but definitely the fiscal year and how you're bonusing and targeting and measuring people doesn't need to end in December 31st, because all those things that I mentioned about people trying to force to close a deal and all those kinds of things then becomes a problem. Also, finance side of things, because I just mentioned sales, they're trying to close their sales and all those kinds of things. So, well, why not push it out? Finance too, in terms of making accurate projections of what happened in the year, like how did the year close out and those kinds of things. And this is important because finance typically is making projections and maybe borrowing money, investing money. Finance, as you know, they're dealing with the cash flow, the liquidity, and all that kind of stuff. So in this sense, cadences and regularity is the spice of life here, right? And it is also the spice of a business. We're talking about a cadence, and if finance knows that, okay, we projected this much this year, and we're gonna therefore make this much this year. Therefore, I think we should take that 2% loan on this thing and defer this tax thing on that other thing. If you can move it away from these kind of hot spots right here in December, that might be a good thing. So it dovetails with what I said earlier about, since you know that January is actually the slow time for you, you're not a business, you should maybe take advantage of that if you've kind of know how things work in that regard.
Right.
Just a thought.
What you're talking about is seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about seasons. It's interesting. There's a biblical passage that comes to mind about being ready in season and out of season, right? So we're acknowledging that there is a flow. There is a busy season, and there is a time that is not busy. And understanding how to navigate in each one of those seasons has something to do with your prolonged success or lack of success, because you're not able to navigate that well. Well, one thing that occurred to me when you were talking, and we were talking about family, And of course, family is important, and ultimately, family is the only thing that actually matters, right? Because everything else is really oriented and created, designed to facilitate survival and thriving of families, people, right? And but often you'll hear people say this, and I want to know what you think of this. First of all, what it is that you think that they mean, and then be free to, feel free to dismantle it and have some fun. Family is first. Family is first. Now, we know this gets thrown around all the time, and sometimes it's thrown around in a sort of, it's like a way to sort of check people. Family is first, right? But then sometimes it's stated, it's coming from someone. They're making you clear of what their priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Now, the context in which I typically hear those kinds of, well, I don't hear it a lot, but I hear it enough that I think I know what they mean. I think that it is typically used as a way of drawing a line on something else that is encroaching upon your time, your budget, whatever it may be. And I don't have the time or the money or the this or the that because that's reserved for family. Now, family is first. When you say something like that, it almost begs the question, well, why did you have to say that? If family was really first, would you have to say family is first? And then also, there's a contrarian kind of side of me that says, well, is family really first, especially if you're a man? We know that family is the goal, the end, because that's kind of like a big part of your responsibility. But a lot of times, the goal is not first. The goal is the goal, right? But what's first is, let's say, your if the goal is to row a boat across the English Channel, okay, going from one side and then go over to Europe, from England to the Europeans, maybe France. Okay, you're going from England to France. France is the goal, but France is not first. What's first is the boat, the rowing, the this, the that, the food, the technique, the weather, the waves. That is first. That is immediate. That's in front of you. So in that sense of first, in the immediate time, what needs to happen right now, sense of first. And I think people talk about importance versus what's the other thing? It's either important or it's urgent, right?
right.
In terms of shall we say urgent, it's not first. It's the goal. I need to go to France. The reason I'm rowing this boat is to get to France. The reason I'm doing all this stuff is for the family. Yes, so that is the goal. But all these other things are first. Now, there is a sense that I have in there of like the family is some kind of amorphous thing. Like, what do you mean when somebody in a case like, let's say we're talking about rowing the boat, and someone goes, well, family is first. It's like, well, what? Your son broke an arm, or I'm trying to find a tangible thing. Like, oh, what needs to be done? So, I don't know, just family. Yeah, but what is that? You get what I'm saying, right? It's just like some kind of a notion of leave me alone, so that I can be or whatever, or that's the kind of sense that I get from it. And I typically am wary of that stuff because it's quite adjacent to that notion again that I have of the idea of morality being about collective cohesion somehow, and that there's a lot of content in collective cohesion. But I don't see a lot of content in there in collective cohesion. Like, it can be collective cohesion of a bunch of Nazis killing the J word people. Is that a moral situation? Is that a worthwhile situation? Is that a is that a good thing? Is that first, right? So, but two things, right? Number one is, when in terms of what they mean, it's typically usually used to draw a line. And in fact, family might be the goal, might be top priority, might be where you're heading, but the means by which you get there and the plans that you make, for example, let's say prioritizing the future versus the immediate things, okay, that might lead you to quote unquote sacrifice what people may call family. In which, like, you're sacrificing your family. It's like, well, but I'm building for the family, right? Um, so it's things like this that come to mind when you say that. And it also what also comes to mind right here is, there is no perfect way of doing this thing called life and family and business and success or whatever.
Mm-mm.
There is none. Okay, so if you do think that you're not going to sacrifice your family in order to save your family, okay, that's just silly, because on an individual level, we know that we sacrifice ourselves in order to save ourselves in the future, right? You sacrifice your present self to save yourself in the future. You're gonna curtail certain things. You're gonna curb certain things, or in a more flippant way, I like to talk about these psychological deals you make with yourself, where it's like, okay, just the part of you that wants this reward, okay, needs to basically, you're like, okay, you're gonna get this reward, okay, but there's this other part of you that doesn't want to do the work, and then those two parts of you need to negotiate. You're like, hey, dude, I know it's kind of hard right now, but we'll get the reward. You do this stuff. You prioritize the present right now, or prioritize the future. That is, so that we can get there. So whether it's France or family or some future goal, it typically, yeah, it's not a very clear thing to me. I'm suspicious of things like that. Well, I don't know. Why did you bring it up? What was this family is first thing? It seems rather, yeah. I'm interested. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's in the holiday season. That is, it is supposed to be, it's stated as a family time. Okay. And if we're saying that we still want to be productive over the holidays, is that at odds with this idea that family is first, right? Especially during a time when, it's sort of a designated family time. Okay. So there's that's part of it. Another part of it that actually occurred to me while you were talking was, it seems to me that citing family is a usual way for someone to get out of a work obligation. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that it is always nefarious when people use that, but you also know when certain people use that as a reason why they're not going to take on additional this or that. Their reason is family. What is it? Boundaries, right? So this sort of thing. When you know that this dude can't stand being with his family, right? Mm-hmm. So there is, so yeah. So that was sort of the thought process, but that is such a frequently said thing. The family is first, but shouldn't your purpose be first? Shouldn't your, you know, it seems to me that certain things have to precede what it is that people mean when they say family first. They mean, most people, it seems that they mean time with your family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's what they mean. However, in order to actually prioritize your family, the health, the safety, the security, you know, the wants and needs, all of that stuff, it's probably often the case that will be that they're not first, right? So
I was
it's tough.
sounds like work-life balance to me. The same kind of
Yep.
But before I go into work-life balance there in a second, there is for someone whom, okay, in other words, their internal constitution is not a lazy one. I mean, kind of you might, I'm not talking about whom is more hardworking or whom is naturally more hardworking than someone else. I'm just talking about in your mind, you want to you want to work, you want to be productive, right? It's not your mental stuff that is holding you back. Okay. Maybe you're fat this season, okay, and you just can't work as hard as okay, cool, fine. That's not what I mean. But you want to work, okay. For those people, there has to come with that the understanding that there's going to be lashes and injuries and all kinds of things that are going to be heaped upon you. Maybe not heaped, but a little bit. It's a result of what people think your obligation should be, right? Outside of that work thing that you want to do, right? There's going to be, again, the social cohesion mob out there telling you, oh, but family is first, or you need work-life balance, or well, that's a little bit greedy, or there's no balance in life. Like, why are you doing all that crap? And that is just going to be a part of it. And people don't burden yourself trying to make others necessarily understand. I'm not necessarily talking about family now, because to some degree, maybe you want them to understand a little bit. But generally speaking, don't start beating yourself up internally because somebody arbitrarily made some time and told you what you should be doing during that time. It's all arbitrary, folks. But so there's that. And then work-life balance in particular. I was having a conversation actually with Kaizo about somebody. The conversation was about doctor pay in the United States versus the UK. Okay. And Kaizo was like, yeah, Americans get paid more, right? And then this other person came back and said, well, no, because if you look per hour, the doctors in the UK work less. So they actually get paid more. And I'm like, but they're broke. It's like, what's your point? Like, I mean, what is this point of like, oh yeah, but they work less hours. What the best formulation, the best kind of, or the steel manning of that position that the other person is taking, okay? Because again, American doctor getting paid this much, UK doctor getting paid less, and somebody says, but Americans work a lot more, so the UK guys get, is actually not getting paid. Now, first of all, to just start dividing up time by money is an arbitrary and silly thing, like, but let's leave that aside. The best notion there is that because the UK person works less, they actually have a better quality of life. That's the idea, which is BS, 100% BS. Okay. Yeah. Look, life is complicated, hard, and there's all kinds of things going on. Okay, there are people who don't work at all and are depressed. Okay, there are people who have the pension trust fund babies who are miserable. Okay, and all these other kinds of things. And speaking of trust fund babies, it is kind of hard to inherit stuff, because as you talk about, like, running away from hell is easy, right? Anywhere you go, it's fine, right? So if you're the guy that built the empire, one aspect of your life is actually quite easy, and that's the aspect of drive. You got drive. You don't have to think about drive. You're trying to get away from hell. You're trying to get away from the poorhouse. You're trying to get away from homelessness. So you have a lot of direction. You have a lot of drive. You have a lot of oomph, fuel pushing you. Your kids or your kids' kids now that just inherit $1 million, they have to invent, and we know how difficult it is. Not everybody is this, artist genius that has 1,000 things that they could do, and it's like, oh yeah, oh my God, I got $1 billion when I was born. I'm just gonna do all kinds of great things. Like, no, 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 no. That's very few people. So most people now they have to do that invention, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, the idea is that the person who's working less has a better quality of life. I'm just like, well, are these people? That's why I think it's completely dishonest. Because there's no universe where that is true. Where
Right.
I work less, therefore I have better life. Have you lived? Have you talked to people? Do you understand what the life problems are? It has nothing to do with whether you stand or sit, walk or run or nothing. Life is just a well, I mean, come on. We've had millennia and books and religions and Jordan Peterson and everybody else telling you about how crazy this stuff is, and you think it's just about how many hours you work, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's always. I mean, we're especially men. I mean, we're designed to work. We're made to work. Working is the thing. It's part of this. It's part of the curse, and also part of the solution. Right, the sweat of the brow, working the earth, the land. Bringing forth vision into reality. That's all of that is work.
Do you think
Work,
that necessarily
work,
refines and
work.
leads to salvation, if you will?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, it's interesting because the liturgy literally means the work of the people or the worship of the people, right? The work of the people. That's what liturgy means. And so, even the most evangelical, trying to break free of any kind of structure, sort of church situation has a liturgy. It's just a cheapo liturgy. It's not particularly worked out. It doesn't have as much nuance, as much detail. But it's still work. The work of the people. And I think that salvation is a joint enterprise. It's a joint enterprise between the person being saved and the person saving. It's always that. If you don't think that's true, I challenge you, just as an experiment, go out in the middle of a lake with someone that can't swim. You can swim, they can't. Throw them out in the water, and then you jump in and see how that goes. Right? They're flailing wildly and they're doing all kinds of stuff that's counterproductive and is working against you. And if you're not careful, you'll both drown. Right? So it's a joint effort between the saved and the saver. It always is. That's one of the things in the Protestant conception that I believe is flawed. And that's this idea that we are not involved at all in our salvation. Right? It's kind of a magical thing that happens when you say the words with earnest conviction, right? Sincerity. If you believe the words, then it will become true. It's almost that. That's a character, that's a caricature. It's hyperbole. You know, of course they wouldn't describe it that way. But you know, I grew up that way. That was the way that I, you know, thought. I say, well, you know, as long as you believe and then you'll be saved. But actually what's happening is, yes, you will be saved, but in no sense are you currently saved. You perhaps you could describe it this way. You could say, I am saved, I'm being saved, and I will be saved. I would not push back too hard against that assessment, right? Because it at least implies that there's a process and that you're involved in the process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, so work is that. Hey, you got to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's book. All right, let's keep going here.
Highly recommend, especially during the holiday season. And this could even be applied if you're on vacation or you need some time away, or let's say that you might be sick or just under the weather for a few days. Recycling older content by giving it new context. I'm not saying that you could float through October, November, December, January with all the stuff that you posted back in April and May. However, I don't want you guys to be overwhelmed, especially when you're pulled away, that, oh, I don't have something new. If it's over like 90 days old, chances are a lot of your new following doesn't know that it was ever posted to begin with. So mix that in. It's called content repurposing. Recycle it in. Make sure that you stay consistent throughout the end of the year. And then when you have more time, then when we go into a fresh, clean slate of a new year, get back into it, batch create, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now, the next thing you need to do is daily goals. Pairs perfectly with the scheduling. 3 to.
Now, what do you think about this repurposing?
Repurposing content. Now, obviously, that's very direct. You know, that's very niche.
Right.
So, I'm going to say one thing about the niche, and then I'm going to see if I can abstract and then find a general thing. Now,
Right.
YouTube Shorts. You know, some old videos that you can take, clip, and make shorts. That one is definitely a good thing. And the algorithm likes shorts. The algorithm is telling you to make shorts. The algorithm will give you more views typically for your shorts. The shorts views can really spike up quite quickly. Something about short content, and that's why also I believe in TikTok. It's easy to seems easier to get followers on TikTok than on YouTube, right?
Very much so.
So yes, I need to get in. I need to get into that. And I was thinking about, you know, when he mentioned this repurposing thing, that was the first thing that came to mind was shorts. And I was like, oh, I have some pretty old and dense content that, you know, I can really just kind of make small little videos out of forever, right? So
a lot of
that's
those
an
videos that you did when you were riding your bike. A lot of that
yeah,
stuff would be tailor made for that, man.
perfect. Like just total short type, you know, moving kind of casual, kind of, you know, yeah. So that is good. And I think it will actually recorded it on a cell phone. So I think it already has the correct aspect ratio and all that stuff. So now in general, when one talks about, you know, repurposing, what are the things that can come to mind? Well, I think of, you know, going back and replowing, right? So in that sense, there is if you're in the world of sales or business development of any kind, which is anything you do, right? There is the idea of following up, brushing back up, going back to the jobs, people you did something for 18 months ago that you haven't heard from, they haven't heard from you, you haven't heard from them. Okay. You may be wondering, well, I guess why haven't I heard from them? Or maybe they just whatever, but they haven't heard from you either, right? So it's a two-way street here. Okay, so something that happens, and as a matter of fact, the holiday time is a good time to do it because there are services out there that will make nice little cards and send a semi-personalized note with a box of chocolates to clients, let's say, of your choosing. And it could be the old clients, which is important. You're trying to go back, replow, find new stuff. Because typically also in this time of year, you're trying to project like, okay, what's next year gonna be? Because we're stuck in the fiscal year type of way of thinking, you know. And most people, if you're salaried, you do get paid, you know, salaries. And if you're in sales, you're getting the bonus that, you know, quarterly typically, but now you're looking at next year and the quarters of next year, what kind of deals can I close and all that kind of stuff. So while you're projecting, it's a good thing to also look back and try to plow back, you know, again, thinking about I'm just thinking about this because he talked about using old content, right? So I'm like, okay, how can I abstract this? And okay, go back, old clients, people you've worked with before, things that you've done in the past, and you know, you just kind of fell off. You got too busy. Maybe you think you don't need them anymore. Maybe you think you don't need that kind of work anymore, but you don't even know where they are right now. Maybe you were, let's if I take my kind of example, um, maybe you were working for a particular. There was a guy who was working at a small outfit, a small electrical company, mechanical company, structural company, building company. He was the project manager there. Okay, and you know, for 9 months now, you haven't kind of contacted him. Okay, he might be in a much bigger role right now, and he's not gonna just reach out to you. Maybe some people like that actually do reach out to you, like, oh yeah, I'm in this place and that now, boom, 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 better deal, bigger company that I'm in, right? But you might find out, you go back and you reach out to this guy, and you're like, oh, as a matter of fact, I'm in this new place, and we were thinking about getting a new service person for X being whatever you do. I don't know what you do. You're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're whatever, right? And boom, now your pipeline for next year is looking better. Okay. Now you're sipping that eggnog happier, right? Because so I think that that follow up, follow through, go back to old things. Now, following up typically also because you know you reach out to somebody and you know this is new client right now, new client you're trying to close, new deal you're trying to get, new something you're trying to make happen in the world of where it belongs to somebody else. Okay, and that's as they say, everything you want, someone else has it, right? Um, unless it's something that has never been created before in the world or some kind of I don't know, right? Somebody else has it, right? So it's not so rather than is so the question of whom has X, right? And typically it's money we're talking about. Money is a good proxy for everything because with that you can get whatever you want, right? So whom has my money is a good question. So you're trying to get that money from the person, but you know you're not gonna get at the first try, the second try, the third try. There's that follow up for the future. But plowing back into the past is also a great idea, especially in times like this, because you might find some gold in there that then helps your future projection. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about this old content thing?
Yeah, so I'll do the similar thing. I'll talk YouTube first, and then kind of uh, abstract out as you said. Um, you know who's really good at that, at the repurposing, at the re-releasing, taking old content and bringing it back to the front is Donovan Sharp.
Hmm.
Donovan is great at that. He'll take a live stream down. It's been down for a month, 2 months, whatever. And then he'll release it again as a premiere video. Minister Jap does that. You know, but what it is that he'll release will be sort of a teaser. He'll play enough of it so that it is content and it's getting watched. So it's getting hours. It's the same content. You're generating hours watched. You're generating revenue that way by using an old video. But then he also has an advertisement for his Patreon at the maybe 30-minute spot mark. And then if you want to watch the rest of this, go to Patreon, right? So he is accomplishing a few things by that. So that's interesting. And then I was thinking about the sort of repurposing networks, refreshing networks, going back through old contacts, old emails, and just reviving certain things, making phone calls, sending text messages, you know, reconnecting with folks, just all of that kind of stuff. A lot of times that can be, you're rustling the bushes. You think you have to be rustling new bushes, but actually it could be old bushes, in your illustration, with the, what did you say, chocolates or something, or some kind of,
Yeah, sending cards with a box of chocolates to. I mean,
yeah,
if you,
yeah.
yeah, it's actually quite effective. Go ahead.
So this reminds me of an episode of The Office. Now, in this sense, Michael Scott, who is some sort of idiot savant, because he's this really, really talented salesperson, reads people perfectly, says the exact thing necessary to make the sale. Unbelievably so, right? But is also a terrible manager and has a lot of serious personality sort of, he's extremely insecure. He is, chronically wastes time. He procrastinates like crazy. He's got a lot of things that aren't particularly good as a manager.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, he was trying to push back against the specter of technology, new ways of doing things that were overshadowing the old ways that they had always done things. And so, in an effort to prove that the old ways to do things were really the superior things, him and Dwight got in a car. They bought all of these baskets. They were hemorrhaging clients to other.
Is Dwight the black guy or is Dwight the white guy with glasses?
He's the white guy with glasses.
Okay.
Okay. And Dwight, of course, it's interesting because Dwight is similar. He's a ridiculous salesperson, but he is just has like his social skills and his just dealing with other people is really strange and awkward, right? Andy's the same way, except for Andy isn't a good salesman either. He's not a good salesman, and he also has the defects, right? So at least Michael and Dwight actually are really good salespeople. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, of course, has all of the soft people skills, plus he's also a really good salesperson. So he has the good qualities, and of course he gets the girly ones. He gets Pam, right? As Angela puts it, the office mattress. Anyhow, so they drive out and they're going to get their old clients back by giving them these really elaborate baskets with chocolates and custom jelly and all kinds of crazy stuff in them, right? So they take them around to all these places and they keep telling them, basically, thanks, basket looks great, but it's not really about the basket for us. Can you lower your prices? And they even said, one of them even said, I don't know, Staples or whatever the company was, they have a website. They have a website and it's easy to order the stuff, right? And of course, website was what he was fighting against. He didn't want them to have the website, right? Because he's real people interfacing with real people. So he's fighting against technology. So the long and the short of it is they go out, they utterly fail. They give baskets away, but it doesn't do anything. So then at the end of this, they themselves, Michael in particular, is actually using the website as a talking point to try to make a sale, to try to regain a client. Yeah. So the market will tell you what it needs, and you either listen to it or you don't.
One thing that came to mind with the going back thing too is a lot of the growth, the good growth, the real exponential growth is as a result of compounding, right? And if you don't actively go back and shake those old bushes, you're not going to be compounding, right?
Right.
It's just
Right.
you're leaving money on the table, or you're leaving work on the table, and you don't go there and you don't build on top of it. So it's just like an effort that was wasted ultimately. So yeah, it is quite important to do stuff like that. The chocolate thing, that is an interesting thing. I do personal. I go to Costco and buy boxes of, they have these, holiday season, right? Costco is nationwide, right? Or am I tripping? It must be.
Yeah, well, there's Costco here, so.
Okay. So do that, and for select people, get the hand, the cards too, and kind of write it. But then for certain other people, it's the automated one where you go to a company and click. I just got one actually from somebody. It's a cleaning service. Like, hey, thanks, Ike, and here's a percent a coupon for your next whatever cleaning. So and yeah, does that attention, by the way, aside from the fact that if you're doing the wrong thing, you're going to be, but attention is really the currency here that is very important. In other words, like, people forget you. I started out by saying, you haven't heard from somebody, but yeah, they haven't heard from you either, right? So
Mhm.
what's the deal? People forget, and also, there is so much going on, whether it's TikTok or Fox News or gas prices or whatever it is. There's so much stuff that can be going on in somebody's head, right? But guess what? With that simple card, okay, that guy sent, he just put himself in my head, right? Now,
Mm.
I don't know what exactly is going to come out of that, but this guy is now in my head as a result of a cheap piece of paper that he sent, okay? And this is
Yeah.
a real thing. I checked the mail today. I saw it today, so it's not. It's real. Um, so you got to understand that there's so many things that could be going on in somebody's mind, and you simply just popping out there, and putting yourself out there, so that they get in you get in their mind as well, is very useful, very powerful. And as a matter of fact, if I do, then it's an ongoing service, right, with this person. So I'm not removing them, but the next time I do think up, oh, cleaning service, it's gonna be that guy, right? Because that's that's the last person that did that kind of service that said anything to me, right?
Right.
So that is very effective. I always say that a lot of times your competition is not the other guy selling pencils or pens. I think pens is the one everybody likes to talk about. Sell me this pen. Your competition sometimes is, or a lot of times, is not the other person selling the pen. It's just all the other things that could be in this person's mind that you have no idea what they are. But what you can do is just show up like McDonald's would do, or this kind of, it's a branding type stuff where, let's say on Twitter, for example, Twitter doesn't do ads, they do branding type ads. In other words, branding type ads, just like, I'm just going to show you my logo, right? Here's McDonald's, here's Target, right? And now that's in your head. Okay, it doesn't say go buy X or go do this. It's just, hey, we're here. Hey, we're here. So that hey, we're here thing is very useful when it comes to plowing back and compounding things, so that it benefits your future.
Absolutely. Let's keep going.
5 goals every single day, non-negotiables. Do them. Make sure you're knocking these things out. Everything else can wait for the most part. then make new goals before you go to bed. Super straightforward, life-changing. Now this just applies like year-round, right? But the last 3 months of the year, even more so. You got to develop that follow-through backbone. Whole lot of things that you guys are saying that you're going to do. I know that it's coming. January, new year, new me, all that stuff. I'm bracing myself for hearing about it in the comments. But what you set out to do, what you're telling people to do, like, do it. Follow through. Give that to yourself. Trust me. If you're not following through, you're breaking promises to yourself, then next thing you know, you don't trust yourself in anything that you're saying. You can visualize.
For some reason, Derek Jackson comes to mind.
What?
I don't know why. Something about
It's a
follow
brand
through.
new. He's got a new lease on life.
Oh, right. But something.
Oh,
about
and the follow through. Okay, gotcha.
Oh,
That too.
yeah.
The follow through thing. Okay. So what I've noticed is there are people whom are just kind of like they're idea generators, and then they try something for a little bit, and then they drop it, and then they move on to another thing. Now they're not the person whom just says stuff and never does stuff. I have no patience with those types of people or whatever, right? I'm talking about the person whom actually tries stuff, but then there's a new thing next week. So for that person, what I would say is try to be more of a tinkerer. Try to be more of a Dr. Thunder. In other words, yes, let your mind be doing all this stuff, but do it for one thing. You're like, okay, I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna be going 1,000 different directions, trying all these new things, see if it works, experimenting, but for my YouTube channel and my other blog, you get what I'm saying? For things that because it takes a long time for things to materialize. So if you have that kind of mind that wants to meander and it kind of sees the possibilities of kind of focus it a little bit. If you can't do that by yourself, maybe you need to find somebody else to help you with that. Be in a business or in a partnership or some kind of a thing, a partnership, a business partnership that is, or find a way to augment that. Whatever, like you're a grown man, or woman, listen to me out there, right? And you know that you have this tendency, okay? That tendency is not going to change. I'm not silly enough to just be like, oh no, change it and become like a burrower that just only focuses on one thing. Like, no, that's not who you're going to be. But what you can be is take that tendency to experiment and move left and right, do all that kind of stuff, and focus it on something. Because that's also a key to success, right? Key to is to pivot, try new, move this way, move that way, change this, tinker that, blah, blah, blah. But don't be doing it with 10,000 things because nothing is going to work ever. Yeah. Okay. Now, my typical way when it comes to follow through, again, because it's follow through that we're talking about, is that I tend to do a lot of waiting. And if you're looking from externally, if you're looking, you may think that I'm actually not going to do this thing that I said I was going to do. I'm talking about big picture kind of things or big kinds of moves. Is that I'm always looking very far into the future, and I'm planning and moving and certain things like that. I'm gathering information. I have a lot of staying power is kind of what I'm saying. So if we were to create some kind of dichotomy in terms of habits of mind, I'm like, okay, for this first type of person, if your mind is going all over the place, try to channel it somewhere or go partner with somebody that has a channel and then be that person's experimenter, pivoter. Great, right? If you're the other type of person whom is looking far into the future, make sure, okay, that you actually freaking pull the trigger at some point, okay? Make sure that all this study, all this kind of watching, blah, 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 that happens. Because someone like me, for example, I do a lot of, I just gather data. Like, and it may be about things that presumably is like, well, why are you constantly just gathering information all the time about everything all the time? But it turns out that I do use it. Okay, I do kind of use that stuff. Okay, whether it's data about like there's several financial like market report things that I just kind of follow for that, just as an example. right? And it's like, am I a trader? I'm not a trader. I don't actually trade stuff, but I'm always following trader information. One of the reasons that I do it, okay, is because I'm an abstractor and I'm looking for patterns in everything. And patterns tend to repeat. It's not an infinite number of patterns, so as we know, right? It tend to repeat. So if you can find a pattern in the market, that pattern also, we talked about cadences, okay? Cadences is an operations management type thing. It's also a, whether, it's also we talked last week about you figuring out the cadences of your work and energy flow. And markets too also have cadences and all kinds of things. There is the be prepared for the downturn and the this and the that and all those kinds of things. There is the hedging. So for me, what I tend to do is I'm gathering all kinds of information, abstracting. But if you're like me, you better make sure you're freaking doing something with it, bro. You can't just be sitting there, you know everything and you can blah blah, but you don't do anything with it. The knowledge never becomes actionable, and that's when there is no follow through for that type of person. So those things come to mind.
Yeah, that's a real risk too with people that are highly capable. Is to not actually do anything, and so you develop a bunch of skills and you like sit around doing nothing. And so having projects is really critically important. And actually having the right project could be the um, um, the critical missing ingredient. I mean, that sounds like simplified or something, but having the right project can be the thing that um, changes everything. It changes your whole everything. You know, again, that seems overly simplified and maybe obvious, but um, yeah.
I do.
Anyhow,
You do run into the people whom. Well, shout out to the super chatter over here, right?
yes, yes. Thank you very much for the support. Red Pill Finance $2.99. Thank you very much.
I'm sure you do run into people whom have the follow through issue, whether they be in the category of they have a bunch of skills, they're not doing anything, or there's this other type where they're constantly wanting to. Oh, I found this perfect hair business, and then I go into it for a little bit, and then and then this other thing, and now I'm doing. Next thing you're making ads for a catering business. I'm like, I thought you were into the hair thing, and next thing they're like trying to do some other type of stuff. I don't really know almost, and I guess I'm asking you now what you would say to them because um, I don't really. That's not an issue that I have in terms of looking at a thousand different places because I'm always trying to condense things, right? And you know me enough to know that that is very true in all things, right? I'm trying to condense things. Don't give me a list of 15 things. I know it's not 15.
Right.
Okay. Where give me the two, right? So for me, even if I'm looking at 1,000 places, I'm always trying to condense it. I'm always trying to abstract something. I'm always trying to find a through line. And the more and more through lines I find, the more opportunities will present themselves, the more I'll be able to see ahead of the corner in any particular endeavor before someone else, or the chances are that are more likely that I'll do that. So for me, when I'm looking at 1,000 different places, I'm always trying to condense it down. So I don't have this issue of getting distracted from the hair business and just going somewhere else. But for somebody whom they can't quite follow through, I don't know if you have anything to say to them. But what do you have anything to say to them?
Yeah, I dated somebody. This is ancient history. But I dated someone and they just couldn't stick to anything. And they'd be really talking something up. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, and it's gonna be the fitness thing, and blah blah blah. And okay, and then it's like, then they would just totally flip to something. Oh no, I'm gonna do this other thing, and you know, now granted, they were pretty young, um, and and younger than I was, like I don't know, maybe 10 years or something like that. And it got to the point where I was like, oh man, I don't know. And it wasn't really that I expected them to have everything together, but I did expect them to at least be able to walk in a straight line and stay on that line until they get to the destination. Just do one thing like that. Just do one thing, you know? So yeah, I mean that is a thing, and I think young people these days struggle with that, I think, more than at any other generation, because there are so many options. It's overload of information options, and I think it just makes it more and more challenging for people to, it's a first world problem. There's too many opportunities. There's too many ways that you could go. There's too many schools you can go to. There's too many fast food places that you could eat at. There's too many. It's just too many. And then you end up wasting a bunch of time because perhaps you think that you need to survey a bunch of stuff. And and probably you don't. You probably need to just kind of like get a sense of, okay, this is sort of the kind of stuff that I feel like I have kind of a knack for, and then I kind of like this, and then just start driving in that direction, and then make course corrections. That's sort of my approach, but that's not.
That's not their approach.
No.
It's interesting because it dovetails when you mentioned the first world problems. We talked earlier about the rich kid problem, right? Because it's similar. This rich kid has infinite options because they have the cash. They could go here. So they tend to lose a certain kind of direction. And I'm wondering, okay, whether perhaps there's something within oneself that one could get down to that will give you a similar directionality as running away from hell gives you, as running away from the poorhouse gives you. And that perhaps there's something that you have done internally, or maybe you're just constituted that way to get to that point where you are now, you're moving in a direction. You don't, and it's not because you're in Afghanistan trying to escape the warlords, but this is an internal thing now where you have found your internal Afghanistan, the internal thing that you don't, you have a structure where that is not it, and I'm moving away from it. So you have a direction all the time, and you know that. And something I would say perhaps to this type of person, I would say that they definitely need somebody else. Okay. Now, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It may sound wrong if an introvert hears that somebody needs somebody else, but most people, a lot of people are not introverts, so it's perfectly fine.
It deeply sounds wrong to me.
It sounds completely wrong.
It's like an insult.
But
like, what do you think? Were you saying I need somebody else? What you trying to say? You trying to question my manhood?
You might need somebody else in this particular regard, because this person is going to tell them this. This person is going to tell them this and give them a structure with regards to this and so on. And this thing is, and this type of person will be like, a mentor, guru, life coach, not in the frivolous sense, but someone that actually could do that. And it will be telling them, giving them this notion, the notion which we also mentioned earlier of compounding. In other words, if what you're doing today, how does it help things you've done in the past? And how will it help ease the future? Because linking the past and the future, that then gives it a through line, right? You don't just want to look at the past, you want to also look at the future. You're trying to focus this person, right? So you give them like, okay, so you're learning this thing, but is that going to help the hair business? Or yes, learn this thing, but let's find a way to help make your programming skill that you're now decided that you want to learn. How do we use that to augment the hair business? Is there a way, right? I decided I'm going to learn this new skill. Well, how does that help, And I think that if you don't have that mental habit, because for me, I'm just going to think of that naturally. I'm not, again, I'm trying to always condense everything So if they have the habit of, oh, now I'm going to go program, now I'm going to go learn this, and now I'm going to go learn accounting, somebody telling them, look, we got to compound. Okay, there's a future target, there's a past target. How is what you're doing right now going to help you in the future? Okay, and this is the key to all kinds of success. Is compounding, right? And then your ability to leverage that thing. I typically say when it just comes to strictly economic stuff, typically a skill is the easiest thing to start with. Is the first thing you can leverage. Okay, and if you have zero skills, then you just leverage integrity, meaning work ethic. And as a matter of fact, at the zero skill rung of the ladder, integrity and work ethic is very rare, and you will immediately stick out like a sore thumb. Everybody will notice that guy that comes in early, works hard, and does what it's supposed to do at the minimum wage paying job, right? You will stick out like a sore thumb. So don't think, oh, I don't have any skills. What do I do? It's like, dude, if you do this thing, it's very rare. It's also rare everywhere else too, right? As you know, like being that guy, but it's more noticeable. You can, when you are the middle management, your laziness can be hidden behind all kinds of BS. But your hard work, okay, will not be hidden at the lowest rung. So, but then after that, you get a skill. The skill then needs to be leveraged. And if you're thinking in this kind of a leveraging way, you'll always want to build up on that skill, right? So that you can leverage more of it. And then you're going to get to a point where you need to leverage labor. Okay. You need to get some other people in to help, this, that, contacts. We were talking, you need to network, whether it be employees or just people that you're working with. Now you're leveraging that other people's labor. And then you're going to hopefully get to the point where you can now leverage capital. And all these things depend on compounding. If you don't stack up the paper, you're not going to leverage it. Okay. You're not going to, capital is money, right? So if you're not stacking up the paper, you're not going to leverage it. You don't stack up the skill, you're not going to leverage it. If you don't do any of these things in terms of stacking, you're not going to leverage any of them. It's never going to go anywhere. You're just going to be at wrong number one of everything. Now, granted, some people get lucky. Well, what are you talking about? That's like 0.01%, of, oh yeah, I just learned and I wrote the next killer app and now I'm a billionaire. It's like, dude, that's not going to happen. It's more likely that you get successful slowly by leveraging and layering on everything. And everything needs to be stacked first before you go out there and leverage it.
Yeah. First you get the power, then you get the money, then you get the respect. That's right.
Visualize, but in the back of your mind, that voice gets louder and louder and louder. Oh, you've said that before. Oh, you've told that person that before. That hasn't happened yet. Why aren't you taking action? And then you become a guilt-ridden sack of potatoes and you just disappoint yourself. What's the point of disappointing yourself over and over and over and over again when simple actions follow through and they combine? And then all of a sudden you have a big domino effect where you knock that little domino and the next domino is twice as big, next domino is twice as big. And the action that you're taking starts hitting milestones. So follow through. Everything I'm telling you here sounds super straightforward, but like less than 5% of you watching this actually do it. So if like 5% more of you guys would actually take action and do all these different things, my job here is done. Now, the last two things are something that you have to keep.
Yeah, he kind of is saying some stuff that we've been saying, so I'm gonna let him go to the next point.
In mind every single day, because it's so easy to completely lose track of these two elements, and that's patience and being present. Patience and presence. You need to be present within what you've done. You need to look at those lists that you accomplished last week and feel good about it. I know that a lot of times our vision is so far out there that we are so freaking impatient. We are so frustrated. We're so bottled up because, dude, not there.
Okay, so some of this is kind of like, meh. But some of it is also like, okay, it is true that a common issue, a common mistake that I make is I don't really take the time to celebrate a win. I don't really do that. I just don't do it. And the reason I don't do it is because I don't have time to do it. right? So even before, you know, even before this big thing is done, I'm already working on the next thing.
Or
I'm
do you
already
actually at
working
least
on.
note the win? Because celebration, yeah, sure. I mean, life is a celebration, right? This idea of, but the noting of it, I think perhaps, especially for someone whom has a follow through issue, this will help because I remember I said, okay, maybe they need somebody to show them the past and also show them the future. If they note that, in other words, if they go back and look at a list of goals that they had for the year and they know, like, oh my God, I actually did hit these. I assume that maybe this will then give them more incentive to stay with the follow through and the compounding, right?
Yeah.
It's something that I actually, because 1 second. I have this one of a few diary things that I actually is supposed to be a diary, but one of the things that I use it for is it's called I put a list of 10 things. You might not be able to read it. The camera is not going to focus on it, whatever. But on the top of that thing there, if anybody sees it, says 10 ideas for X. So, and the next page is 10 ideas for X. I'm just writing like 10, 10, 10. Plus also I put in some goals. The 10 ideas stuff is more of some call it a creativity exercise. In other words, like Jordan Peterson uses this as an example in terms of, like, one of the tests for creativity is to ask people, well, how many words can you come up with starting with S right now, right? And then they're like, da, 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 da. So I'm like, well, give me 10 ideas for growing your business right now. And then you're like, okay. So it's like, before you go to bed, just think of like 10 things. Just a good exercise. That one is just fun. The other thing that I do is, I'll write these goals of like 10 ideas for, like I said, the business, or doing something. And then I'll write it down, think about it thoroughly for some of these. And then sometimes I go back and I see, oh, I actually did do about 8 of these, right? And it actually did work, right? Because sometimes you're not thinking, right? Because it is, if it's true and it's logical, then it makes sense and you're going to do it, right? If you're not sleeping. So going back and seeing that, I do get a little, I'm like, hey, that's good. I actually did knock that one out, right? Like, because sometimes when you're writing it, like, oh, so really, is this going to really happen? To go back and see that it actually did happen is kind of nice. But,
Yeah. Now, are those 10 thing lists properly distilled and condensed? Or if we had you, you already know what I'm going to do it. You already know how to do it. Or if we had your list, would you be pot chatting? Well, there's only really 3 things.
you would. But then my list of 10 things is going to be more rock solid than the other person did. It's going to be harder to because I am the one writing it, right? So I'm not going to be repeating myself the way people do, right? Like
right.
I think one of the ones we were doing was it was like the bylaws or the rules of, or the it had some kind of a raison d'etre, the freaking reason for, the charter, right? And about like 9 of the things are the same thing. It's like, we stand for X. We stand against everything that is not for X. And we will promote X. It's like, dude, you're just telling me over. Yeah, I get it. X. You're about X. And you wrote it, literally wrote this thing 10 times. So I'm less likely to do that because when I'm challenging my creativity that way, I'm not just going to repeat myself. I'm like, it's got to be different from the,
I'm just saying that it seems somewhat arbitrary that all of the lists have to have 10. That seems to be remarkable symmetry.
It's a beautiful number.
It's right. It's a remarkable symmetry. And if not 10, why not 15 or Okay. Anyhow, let's keep going.
There yet. I put in so much work. Why have I not made it yet? Because you haven't caught up with time yet, right? We could see our vision, but our actions need to make that a reality. So you need to have aggressive patience, because I promise you that you're going to have days, maybe even today, don't feel like doing this. Don't feel like doing the 3 things that are on your list. There's going to be days where you feel like you're not making any progress. That's why you have to be present in what you're doing. You have to be patient in the fact that your actions will lead you to that destination. Let me know in the comments right now what you're most frustrated, what you're most worried about, if this video has brought you any value. We're in this together, guys. The last 2 months, even for me, are the hardest of the year. Something that we constantly have to remind ourselves. And quite honestly, that's why I'm shooting this video, because I have to remind myself. I leave little notes in my product.
Okay, I'm just glad that he didn't pull out the and by the way, I have this course for you to buy, like the one of the last guys did.
Yeah, this guy seems to be more what the opposite of what that guy is. You know, the other guy whom was very polished and just seemed like, you know, just seamless transitions into a lot, you know, name dropping his girlfriend and all kinds of weird, just the right politically correct ideas going on with his video. But this guy seems to actually care. And typically the caring puts me off, right? Like this, what he just said about we're in this together. I'm the kind of guy that's like, oh, what are you talking about, right? But it actually seemed genuine coming from this guy, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, we're in this together. Get the hell out of here, you know? But it actually seemed like, because for example, when he mentioned, and the reason why it seemed genuine is because he mentioned only 5% of you are going to do it. So you know, he's real. He seems like he's a real, like he knows, and he seems to be genuinely frustrated by the fact that, look, these things are simple, but you guys are not doing it. And then he says we're in this together. So I kind of, you know, good vibes.
Activity planner, reminders on my phone. You know, I have a great team around here. Shout out to Zach, Chico, Red, everybody else. You know, we have to keep each other accountable, because otherwise we blink, 6 months, a year, 5 years goes by. Let me know if you've experienced that, because I know I have. I might have to leave a comment in the comments below as well. Anyway, guys, progress is right on the other side of this video. If you haven't joined the channel family yet, click that little subscribe button to join us here. Come connect with me over on Instagram and TikTok. I appreciate you watching. Make sure you make the rest of the year count, and I'll see you in the next video.
Good. He's got a very
these are 3 things that
regular guy vibe about him. And I kind of like that. He mentioned the whole kind of not feeling like doing stuff. Do you ever feel that way? No, I feel that way a lot, but I'm not asking because I don't feel that way.
Oh, definitely. I definitely feel that way. Not feeling like doing something. And I don't want to give any oxygen to lazy people right now. And I don't actually think that momentum is a real thing. However, when you get started doing something, it's less challenging to edit something than it is to come up with something. So if you just get something out, then you can say, okay, a lot of this is hogwash, but there's a couple things here. And then you can start to see the shape emerging as you're moving things around. And especially in my writing, my composing, my arranging, that definitely is the case. If I can just get some ideas out, then all of the sort of skills that I've developed, my musicianship, can take over and create something out of the, you know, whatever the stuff that's there. right? And just tweaking this and modifying this a little bit and changing this harmony and this rhythm and hey, okay, oh, there's a form emerging. Oh, I see that this is going to be like this. Okay, now let me repeat that, but transpose it here and like that. See, now it's like now now it becomes that. But often is the case, getting to that point
It's a tough one, right?
That's the tough thing.
So
It is
yeah.
a tough thing.
So perhaps momentum is not the right conception then, or
Yeah.
it's not like there's a right or wrong conception. It's like, okay, the more apt conception in your way of describing it is that starting is the heaviest load. It's not that when you start, it just, there's a kind of momentum thing. It's just like the big, because in other words, it's an internal thing. That the internal load stopping you is often the hardest, right?
Yeah.
And another way of saying it is inspiration is rare, right? To just be feeling inspired and wanting to go. And hence, what the notion that, oh, there's momentum is a way of tricking people to get inspired. I'm just pulling it out of my whatever, right? It would seem that way, given this particular kind of notion here, if indeed, as we have noted, that internal block, which often stems from not feeling like doing something, is often the hardest step. And typically, once you do the hardest step, you don't think about it as a momentum thing. It's just that, once you do the hardest step, then it makes sense to take the next step. You're like, okay, I guess I did the hardest thing, and now I'm just gonna keep on going. But in order to get people to do that first step, you tell them things like, oh, there is momentum, and there's this, and there's that, and after all, that stays in their head. It's an idea in their head. They're gonna hear it, and it might serve as a substitute for inspiration, right? The substitute for inspiration for them to think that there's this momentum thing. But in reality, it would seem, based on this description, that it's just that it's the hardest thing. The hardest, you're the person in your way. In other words, it's kind of right.
Well, it's interesting. So, if you think about the creation of the world and the heavy lifting involved with that, so we're God's eye view here. We're God now, right? We're recreating the earth, the universe, the heavy lifting, the Big Bang, the expansion of the universe, the perfect conditions created for life, right? All of the stuff, right? And just imagine just getting that started, the kind of just raw effort involved. So much so that God rested, right? And we'll take this as a metaphor, right? But it's interesting because all of the sort of shaping of things seems far lesser of the challenge. It's getting matter to exist in the first place, getting these principles of physics to exist in the first place. Then it's like, okay, now I see what I got here. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do that, right? So it's all challenging and intricate and intense, but certainly the Big Bang seems like that was maybe the hardest, the biggest lift, as you said.
With regards to also last word here on this, what I tell myself, because again, I do see in this particular conversation right now, I see all that momentum stuff as part of the internal talk, which we all have. We're not dead inside, so we do have to kind of tell ourselves something as we go along to kind of get over a hump here and there. So that feeling of not being able to do something, I kind of I always construct that as, oh, this is the real work. This is the challenge. This is championship stuff, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like all the working when you're in the flow and you feel like working. And, oh, good, I just did this and boom, I knocked that out. I solved this. That's also good too. But the real battle, I like to think, because it helps, is when you don't feel like it. I'm like, oh crap, here's the real deal. Now I gotta pick up that rock and climb up that hill. So that helps me. That story, that narrative around it, that this is the real work. It's not when I feel like it, that this is the real challenge. This is what separates the boys from the men. The boys don't do this, but I'm gonna do it, even though it doesn't feel like it. That helps me.
Yeah, this is the challenge, right? This is the what is it? What is it? The medal. This is the this is the great struggle.
Yeah, you talk about focus and as opposed to the shiny object thing, right? So
yeah, that's the big challenge. The whole eat the frog thing. And if you think about it too, that's where you need the most intensity, and that's where you have to you got to dig down and get that out of there, and then there's like the other stuff that you actually really enjoy natively just doing. Like you don't need any energy for that, so it's just like just do that later.
And maybe it's going back to the compounding stuff and just using the whole kind of very true analogies of exercise, right? I also remember that this heavy lifting is developing the muscle that has, and as a result of me doing this all the way in the past, I have all these muscles. I don't even know that I have them, but the fact that I'm digging now, and this is a muscle. I'm gonna be better off in the future because of this.
That's right. Yeah, that's a really good point. In a larger context, we would call, I talk a lot, about, how the sort of devastation of divorce. It's not just what happens to you now. It's not just what you are doing to yourself, to your spouse, especially to your kids. It's the establishing that as the standard. This is the standard, and it's going to be so much harder for your kids to not opt for divorce. It's going to be so much harder. So this is in a larger context, more global, but it's the same principle. So if you don't allow yourself to, take the easy way out, the coward's way out, the lazy man's way out, and you just buckle down and you say, I'm going to do this, then in a very real sense, you will be more likely to do it the next time, and then even more likely to do it the next time. And that's how you create tradition and a positive tradition of something. That's the strength of tradition. That's the strength of legacy, but you got to do it. You have to do it first in the small things, right? In the mundane things, and while nobody's looking, right? That's when it really matters, is when no one can see you doing it.
Yeah, unfortunately, just like you mentioned with the divorce thing too, and now you're mentioning the positive side, the negative side internally too, right, is also true. If you take the path of least resistance, next time, guess what's going to happen? It's even easier to take the path of least resistance.
That's right.
And if you're a certain type of person, which I'm not, you can go look at psychological studies about it. The reason why I'm not coming from psychologists and neuroscientists and all those type of people, but it's a certain kind of like stating the obvious to me, again, because I'm always focused inward. And then the notion that, oh, somebody has to come and tell me, like, oh, you know what, if you do this, you're more likely to do them. Like, is that gonna really make me like, I'm just like, and I get it as a study, and you write it down in books and those kind of things as a collection of the knowledge. Yes, I get it, but I don't really think it helps anybody. But they do study and they do show both neurologically, right, in terms of these neural pathways, that if you take the path of least resistance, you're grooving a path in that brain that is just gonna keep on falling there. And if you, and this is mainly in addiction studies, as you would imagine, right? And if you start building the new path, then you start building the new path, a good path as well. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming, everybody. Please share, like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos. Support Black Male Media, support independent media. Super chats enabled. Super thanks for the Replay Gang and Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. We'll be back here. Ike will be joining me back for Case Closed on Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure you come back for that, an all-star panel. So make sure you do that. Also, Getting Ish Done will be on Ike's channel next week. This is a program that now alternates between our platforms. And so please come back. And make sure you go on over to Ike's channel. It's sub to Ike's channel. It's got a lot of great content over there. And very thought-provoking, introspective, philosophical, but also practical, and it's very it's really good, engaging material. So go on and check that out. And on that note, we are done. See you later,
Peace.
everybody. Peace.